Henry Smolinski and Hall Blake, the first inventors on our list, created the AV Mizar, a flying car. In 1973, Henry and Hall came forward with this invention. In collaboration, these men literally sawed apart a small Cessna Skymaster, a small airplane, and a Ford Pinto car, and then welded both parts together. How did they do this, you may ask? Well, they took out the airplane's front engine and cockpit, put the wings of the airplane over the roof of the vehicle, and placed the car's second engine close to the car's body. They integrated the cockpit into the dashboard of the vehicle and made the steering wheel control both the vehicle and the wings. When tested, the vehicle was able to reach heights of about 12,000 feet and cover a distance of approximately 1,600 kilometers. Although it had to be tested first before they could put it out to the public for sale, the pilot that tested it, Charles Janus, had to land it in a bean field because of steering issues. But even with that, it was a breakthrough, given the distance it was able to cover, and most importantly, it could fly. At that time, people had begun to send in pre-orders, 34 orders to be exact, for this futuristic technology, which was to cost at least $15,000, well, at that time. Then, Henry and Hall decided to fix their errors by creating another prototype of the Mizar. They fixed in a better aviation engine, and as promptly as September 11, 1973, they both decided to test this invention by themselves. But then, disaster struck. 2 minutes after takeoff, the right wing of the flying vehicle started falling apart, and the entire vehicle followed suit, all happening mid-air. The car fell from a distance of 400 feet, crashed, and caught fire. When the fire was extinguished, of course, our inventors were both dead. When an investigation commenced as to why the invention crashed, several factors such as the weight of the car being too much for the wings, bad welding, and some loose parts all contributed to the destruction and the demise of Hall and Henry. Now, these inventors were not dull people. They were hyper-smart, and in their days, some of the smartest people to ever live. But as to err is human, these inventors erred in situations that ended up costing them their lives. In this example, we have Abu Nasr Al Jahari. He was a Persian scholar and a very bright mind who wrote a dictionary in Arabic. He settled down in Iran and slowly, he began to develop some mental illusions. In this case, he made himself believe he was a bird. So, with that theory, he crafted a pair of wooden wings and jumped off the top of a mosque in Nishapur, which is commonly known today as Iran. Well, he jumped off the mosque, and as the law of gravity states, he fell straight down, face first, to his demise. Back in the day, things weren't as easy as they are now. The internet and social media have made it so very easy for us to access news and information, but in those days, you had to get your newspaper to get information. William Bulock was an American inventor who made massive improvements to the rotary press in the United States by improving the system being used. The system he designed would continuously feed the items with the materials it needed without anyone having to stand there and man the machine all day long. Pretty cool, right? Then, in April of 1867, he was making an adjustment to one of his machines that was being used at the Philadelphia Public Ledger newspaper. He kicked the machine, and then his leg got stuck in the rotating wheel of the machine, crushing his leg instantly. That wasn't enough to kill him, but then later, the leg got infected with gangrene, and while he was undergoing surgery on that leg, he died. The zeal to explore and discover is a major driving force behind the loss of lives and daring acts performed by humans. An example is the Chinese legendary rocket man Wan Hu. There's not too much info as to when he lived. Some say the 1600s, some say 2000 BC. He built a special chair and attached 47 rockets onto it. On the day of liftoff, he put on his best clothes and sat on this special chair, and then he made 47 of his servants light one rocket each before they quickly dashed for cover. There was a huge explosion, and when all the smoke had cleared, both the chair and Wan Hu were nowhere to be found. While some might say maybe he made it to space, in reality, he was just blown to smithereens. The tale of Franz Karl Reichelt's invention. His goal was to create a suit for people that would be able to act as a parachute in case of an aircraft crash or something related. No matter the cost, he was determined to do this, and as a result, he got a nickname, the Flying Tailor. On February 4th, 1912, he had a presentation to show his invention to a large crowd. He had previously tested it on a mannequin in his abode, and the device worked. the mannequin landed without so much as a scratch. Then, this time, he managed to get the Paris authorities to drop a mannequin from the Eiffel Tower, displaying his work. Only this time, he snuck himself onto the Eiffel Tower to make this jump himself, with 100% certainty that it was going to work. Sadly, it didn't, and he met his demise as he hit the ground. Robert Cocking was a painter. While being pretty successful as a painter, he saw himself as something he was not, a scientist. He had no background in science and knew literally nothing about it, but he was always performing unsanctioned experiments and, blowing things up. In 1802, he witnessed the first parachute jump and thought he could do better. Without any qualifications whatsoever, he spent the next couple of years of his life designing and creating a conical-shaped parachute. When he was done with the prototype, he contacted two friends who had a hot air balloon to help him test it out. On June 24, 1867, they set out to experiment. At about 5,000 feet, he deployed his parachute, but it wasn't until his parachute inverted that he rapidly crashed to the ground, and didn't survive the fall. His calculations must have gone wrong somewhere, and not being an actual scientist proved fatal to Robert in this case. During the later days of our present world, these inventors created machines and devices, some of which were literally a death sentence. But these daring creations inspired the invention of those things we all make use of today. This one is a very popular story that resonates in the hearts of many of us. An Irish businessman and shipbuilder in the early 20th century named Thomas Andrews designed a colossal sea liner that housed two enormous four-cylinder steam engines and a gigantic steam turbine. This creation is none other than the Titanic. This vessel was a remarkable highlight of efficient and elite engineering, but ultimately, we all know what happened to it. Andrews was also on board this ship. On April 14, 1912, at about 11:40 p.m., she hit an iceberg, a very massive one at that, and it managed to puncture a hole in this invention. He spent his last few minutes getting the passengers aboard safety boats before sinking with his ship. There's a backstory that stated that the sailors spotted the iceberg before the starboard impacted it and informed the high authorities, Andrews included, about whether they should turn and pass another route. But he instructed them to go through the iceberg, saying that the Titanic could take it. He put his trust in the Titanic, which led to his death. There are also reports of Thomas Andrews previously stating in an interview before they sailed, when asked by a reporter, "How strong is the Titanic?" that not even God can destroy it. This was another view of his demise, as God, the supreme being, showing his ever-mighty superiority, like, "You dare not challenge me." It's just a view, by the way. You all can let me know what you think about Thomas Andrews and the Titanic in the comments below. A man named Francis Stanley and his twin brother, Freeland Stanley, invented the very first steam engine vehicle, and it was an amazing invention at the time, though it was more expensive than other cars. But the catch was that it used a little amount of fuel, did not have a combustion engine, making it noiseless, and on top of that, it lasted longer than normal cars and performed way better than normal cars. The catch behind this invention was simply a system that burned gasoline to heat a water-filled cauldron. The cauldron would then transmit the energy to the rear axle, making the car more powerful and more effective than the vehicles of that time. This was an all-out invention to replace the internal combustion engine, or better still, the internal explosion engine, as Francis used to jokingly call it. In 1897, the brothers started working on the steam engine vehicle. The next year, in 1898, they both participated in a race and a kind of safety test. The onlookers were surprised by the performance of this vehicle, as it was entirely noiseless at the time. It was said to cost about $45,000, which is still quite expensive even in this age and time. However, the vehicle would cost him his life. On July 31, 1918, he was riding his Stanley steam engine at roughly 85 miles per hour on a rural town road near Topsfield, Massachusetts, when suddenly a farmer's cart pulled up on the road. In an attempt to evade the cart and prevent an accident, he tried to just pass side by side, but with such speed, he couldn't. He turned the steering wheel, drifted into the grass, hit a pile of logs, and his vehicle flipped on its head. He sustained many injuries and was taken to the hospital upon sight, but he died anyway. The Russian Valyrian Abovsky was a very intelligent engineer who worked for the Soviets. Well, he worked as a Soviet engineer. He would meet his doom when he went a little bit further and decided to build a railcar for the Soviets called the Aero Wagon. Even if the invention led to his death and that of a couple of other officials, Valyrian is remembered as the man who created the Aero Wagon. It was a high-speed rail car, and what made it unique was the integration of an aircraft engine and a propeller, allowing the vehicle to reach speeds of 140 kilometers per hour, which is equivalent to 87 miles per hour. Designed to aid the transportation of Soviet officials quickly, they decided to test run it on July 24, 1921. Ultimately, the Aero Wagon derailed at maximum speed and had a fatal crash, instantly claiming the life of Abovsky and about 6 others in the wagon with him. These inventions that have ultimately cost the lives of inventors in times past have been improved in recent years, as development and innovation are improved upon every single day. But it doesn't mean that testing these machines and devices is not risky. We simply are in a time where knowledge is more dispensable than it was then. At least that's what I think. How about you? What do you think? Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to preview more content like this. Stay tuned for more.